J.A. Stretford, Paddock. This is the Paddock podcast. Joining me are two of my faves. I've got Mr. Joe Smith.
How you doing?
Good?
I'm doing really well, thank you.
Good. Looking smart there.
Thanks, who are
But
you?
I'll tell you what, who's looking even smarter? Abdullah.
Thank
looking
you.
absolutely
Appreciate it.
bang on, brother.
Well, I went Milan in Milan Fashion Week, so I had to.
You've got to raise the,
You got to raise.
raise
I
the
went.
standards.
I was looking around. I was thinking, shit.
Well, you've done a very good job.
Yeah,
we're gonna be talking about Abdullah's fashion a little bit later on, but first of all, we're gonna be talking about the international break and how Manchester United's players have been absolutely smashing it, no doubt because of Erik ten Hag. But before we get all into that, and make sure you do get involved in the chat and the comments, here's a message from our sponsors.
Raid Shadow Legends has taken over and gaming will never be the same again. The Doom Tower is an amazing addition to the game. This introduced a whole new world of terrifying bosses to slay. Sprawling over 120 levels, the Doom Tower brought exciting new challenges for seasoned players, bosses and heroes. As a high-level collection RPG, Raid started with hundreds of unique characters and bosses. The game designers must have had an absolute field day creating these characters. Look at the sketches. And this month, Raid released a giant new feature, Awakening, and a brutal new dungeon, the Iron Twins Fortress. And if you're good enough to take down the Iron Twins, you will get a massive payoff, being able to awaken your champions. Awakening your champions lets you choose a powerful blessing that can transform how they perform in battle. Raid has just released a super-powered legendary version of everyone's favourite champion, Death Knight. He's powerful, he's fantastic. Everyone can get him for free. All you have to do is log in and play Raid for 7 days between now and October the 27th. You can also use the DK Riders promo code for a bunch of free items to instantly level your new strongest champion all the way to level 50, 5-star Ascension. And if you haven't started playing Raid yet, click the link in our description or scan the QR code on screen now and you'll get unique bonuses worth $30. A free champion, 200k silver, an energy refill, an XP boost, one ancient shard, so you can summon awesome champions as soon as you get in the game. All of this treasure will be waiting for you, so check out Raid Shadow Legends.
So the international break is here, and we don't really like international breaks usually, do we?
No.
We're like, international break, boring, yeah, whatever, just get back to the proper football.
Yeah.
But it is good to see how well Manchester United's players have been doing, because if you look at it, people have been not just doing well, but they've been excelling. I'll start with one of the ones who's probably having the best international break he's ever had, Diogo Dalot, who he hadn't scored for Portugal before this international break, and he got count them, 2 goals in one game against Czech Republic, was it?
Left-footed as well.
Left-footed.
Make sure you mentioned that.
Yes,
Left-footed.
left-footed. Joe, how impressed are you with not just what Dalot's been doing for United, but the fact that he's taking that form to his international team as well, his national team, I should say.
It's great, isn't it? And I love that Man United have been basically the team of the tournament so far for the Nations League.
I love that. That's a great way of putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have been the team of the tournament.
United
All of our
have been the
players
team
have
of the
been
tournament.
sensational. Dalot, that game, and I don't know, obviously, maybe it was just an illustration of how much he's improved.
Yeah.
But like players sometimes have a game where you go, that was the moment where they went to another level, when they went from being like, oh yeah, he's looking like he's in decent form, and then all of a sudden, when it starts to click across multiple sort of platforms, where it's like, not just for United now he's doing it, he's doing it internationally, he's getting assists, he's getting multiple goals. Obviously, he's not going to score every week for Portugal, and he wouldn't be expected to.
No.
But like, there's a difference where someone like Anthony Martial, where I always felt his international form, what is it, like 2 goals in 30 appearances or something?
For Anthony Martial?
For Martial?
Yeah.
Something of that nature anyway. Always meant that he wasn't sort of flying in all formats. Right. And there was always something sort of that was holding him back a little bit for United. I feel like Dalot now, he's hitting a point where we might look back on this in 6 months or a year's time and say, that was the moment he went from being, coming into the team, looking good under Ten Hag, to, Jesus Christ, we've got a real player on our hands here. Because you look at Tyrone Malacia, who we all consider the sort of raw talent who could well improve. He's got a lot he's got the natural abilities, he's got the energy, he's got the work rate, but he needs to improve his technical side, but he's got time to do that. And whereas Dalot's been in the team for so long, you almost think of him as this sort of, not elder statesman, but like mid-20s, kind of that. They're the same age.
Yeah.
Malacia and Diogo Dalot are the same age.
That when you told me that earlier,
Yeah.
I was flabbergasted.
They're both 23.
Yeah.
So if you think that Malacia's still got a lot of years left in him, a lot of time to prove himself, Diogo Dalot's got exactly the same thing. And obviously, in the past, I've criticised him for his performances and what he has done, which I think is fair enough. If someone's not been great, you're allowed to say they've not been great. But he's turning into a player where you think, not just going forward is the output really upped since any previous season for United, but defensively looks so much better as well. I'm so excited for Diogo Dalot, and now the view seems to have shifted on him where, like I said, he's gone from this surely he's 25, 26 because he's been around for so long. Well, actually, he's a young player that is massively improving and will continue to improve. And I think if he can have this thing where it's for United, he's brilliant, for Portugal, he's brilliant, then all of a sudden that confidence ceiling rises where you can sort of enter a new mode as a player, and I'd absolutely love to see that.
There was an element of that, though, wasn't there? And I'll get to you in one sec, Abdullah. Of that in the Euros where he came in as a last-minute replacement. Was it Cancelo who was injured? Or was it he came in for someone, didn't he, in the Euros?
Yeah, he did, yeah.
Because he wasn't originally in the squad. And he played a couple of games and he did okay. But I think there was glimpses there when you go, there's a player there, you know.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There's someone there and it seemed to help him.
The Euros, the under-20 Euros, I
Yeah.
think there was a tournament that was played before that, and then he got called from that tournament into the Euros team. And he played really well in that tournament. And I think with Diogo Dalot, I just feel like he always lacked a run of games. And I think when you talk to people in around him and the frustration that comes from him is the fact that when he looks at his minutes, he's gone, I've had 30 minutes there against Brighton in the League Cup. I had 90 minutes. The only 90 minutes I've had all that season is 90 minutes against Tranmere Rovers, which I scored in. A great finish. Of course, it was Tranmere Rovers, so no one's going to care about that.
Scored a belter in that game as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he's got an absolute banger, so no one's going to care about that game.
Yeah.
But again, there wasn't enough time for him to prove a point. Now, I'm not saying if he would have had a run of games at that stage that Dalot would have been in this form, but then those are key years of development. And I actually think it shows his mentality, that the fact that a lot of players, when they're not getting the minutes at that age, they really get lost. And I feel like because those years of 21, 22, going into 23 are key for your proper development to enter then your prime years. And I feel like with Dalot, the only time I see him really have a run of games over the last few years since he joined Man United was at AC Milan. And even then, I think because they have Calabria at right back for AC Milan, who now actually looks poor, and that's why a team like AC Milan wanted to go back in for him, and obviously he wants to stay at United now. They went and signed Dest, but it shows for me that in that period I was seeing little bits, whether he was at left back, that connection with Leao that he had at AC Milan, scored a goal or two there, he did pretty well for them. But whenever he had a few games, I could start understand the game a bit more, because you need to come up against proper opponents. It's not just about in training, it's different, isn't it? Training is such a different situation, because in training it's more you're playing against the same teammates, you're not in the ground, the atmosphere is not the same, the pressure is not the same, and I feel like you need to be in game situations. And there are little games last season where you start seeing things like the Arsenal away game. I think, in my opinion, if we had signed a right back in Jan and he had some of the games that Dalot had under Ralph, I think people would be like, yeah, this is a good right back. But I think because people in their mind, they would like, oh, it's Dalot, he's pretty basic, he's not got much to his game, he's not this or that. But when I look at that Arsenal game, he went for a goal on a couple of occasions, threatened, and I said this, I think we did the Ten Hag tactical thing, I think as Ten Hag was joining a few months ago, and I said that one of the players that I'm actually looking at who could sort of do what Matsurawi did for Ajax, start entering the area, start becoming a goal threat, coming on the inside of the pitch and being part of the midfield, being able to stretch wide as well. I think someone like that was Diogo Dalot for me. So, yeah, in my opinion, I think Man United and Ten Hag have done a great job with him so far this season. I think Diogo Dalot's still going to make mistakes. He's still going to continue to learn. But, from the outside looking in, and from when you speak to people around him, and you feel like everyone's pushing him around him, he himself really wants to be a Manchester United legend. He wants to prove himself here. And I think that mentality in our back four right now, actually, when you look at Terrell Malacia, which we'll speak about, and of course, the likes of Varane and Martinez, you really feel that them wanting to win and I think you could tell that in their body language in that Leicester game. Obviously, when they do the chest bump and the high fiving each other after challenges, and I think you want to see that on the pitch. And yeah, I think I can expect Dalot to start becoming a bit more of a goal threat slowly, because I think that's what happened with Mazraoui at Ajax. His most productive season was the last season before he moved to Bayern and before Ten Hag left.
The thing as well with him is, I'll admit, I'm surprised by this. I wasn't sure that he was like capable of improving this much and putting this run of form together of the last sort of 4 games or 5 or 6 games that he's played in. I wasn't sure he'd ever be this player. And obviously 5 games isn't enough. But if you can continue this form over the next few months, then you can start to look at someone that's a genuinely very good right back, which I wasn't sure he ever would be. Are you surprised by it, Jay?
But the thing with Dalot is there's a lot to like about him. We all like him. You can't question his attitude and the sort of the effort that he puts in. It was just is the quality there, is the sort of tactical awareness there or whatever. And I think there was there's a reason there was a question there. It wasn't unfair to question that, because some of the performances, were all right. They were good.
Yeah,
others weren't good enough.
No.
And I think you look at the first 2 games of the season. I know there's a lot of players that struggled, but the Brighton game, I don't think he did very well. And the Brentford game, again, wasn't a good performance across the board. But you're looking at him going, has he got what we need? But you can see he's been listening to his manager. He's been working on his game. And, I said it, I tweeted it, I think 3 games after that, was it the Leicester game? And I said, Diogo Dalot's best 3 United games have been his last 3 games. I think Leicester, because it was the Liverpool game, the Southampton game, the Leicester game. I thought he was fantastic in those 3 games. I thought he didn't barely put a foot wrong. And I think that you can see there's a player that is willing to improve, that wants to improve, that has all the attributes personality-wise and attitude-wise you can want. The question is, has he got the talent? And I think he's sort of answering those questions. The jury's still out. Listen, we're 6 games, Premier League games in, and a couple of Europa. So I'm not going to say that's it now. We've definitely got, because I'll be honest with you, 6 games in Aaron Wan-Bissaka's time at United, I thought he was the answer.
Me too.
I think the difference is with Dalot,
I don't want to get too carried away just yet.
He's not just throwing himself. He's not just throwing his body at challenges and like making great tackles or whatever. That is great, but I feel like I mentioned this point last season about him, and I think a lot of the time I got rinsed for it in the comments, which was why Diogo Dalot is a better defensive player tactically. I know people are going to go mad at me now saying this, than Wan-Bissaka. Diogo Dalot takes up higher positions, which are a lot more aggressive, which allows Man United to turn the ball over. That's why Ralph, not a lot of players did well, but for patches, Dalot did well, and Fred was our best player in that period, in my opinion, under Ralph, because his system was based on that aggressive high press, turning the ball over. And I felt a lot of the time you'd see, I think there was a game at like Brighton at Old Trafford, the Arsenal game, where the opposition player would receive it, then you just see Dalot come instantly and nick it off him without having to really make a sliding challenge or anything like that, or a tackle. And he would be higher up the pitch, which then puts you in a better defensive and better offensive advantage. It puts you in an advantage ahead of the team in that sense. You're not allowing the team to come all the way down your flank and constantly make sliding challenges and constantly be in a 1v1 situation. Now, there are parts of his game that I feel like some fans did overlook, but I do agree with Jay. There is clear improvements where there's bits that I've not seen. Like his 1v1 defending has definitely improved. Like, I watched the game the other night. I think the only thing I missed was I nipped out and I'd come back and I'd missed that banger they had from outside the box. But from what I'd seen in that game was whenever there was a 1v1 situation, he'd time it very well. He'd go down into the challenge. He'd make the smart move. And I think he's starting to put his body across a bit more aggressively. And I think it's not just about that physical and technical aspect with Dalot. I think it's that one willingness and wanting to win that challenge and win that ball. And I think what he's doing on the ball very well this season, which I feel like he's always had when you watch a lot of his clips from when he was younger or when you watch what he did at Milan. But I feel like this is where it comes down to like your mentality and having the right coach, is that inside field play where he gets the ball, comes into the middle. Those before his first goal for Portugal, you'll actually see him pick up the ball, win it in his own half, play a ball into the centre, receive it back, then drive through the middle, then end up in the area. And then he makes a slight move which allows Leao to pull the ball back to him. And now things like that, it's just like you look at him and that's what a modern fullback is now. You look at Cancelo, and I tweeted as a joke. I'm not obviously comparing them at that level, but I do see a lot of what I watched from Cancelo at Inter Milan, Juventus, and Valencia, where he started getting it together at 24, 25. He wasn't really a known player like that, by the way. You've got to remember Cancelo was getting loaned out. I think it was between Benfica, Valencia, Inter Milan. He wasn't really that guy. Then he had that season at Juventus.
27 when he joined City?
Yeah, I think he was 26, 27,
Yeah.
around that age. So I think he's 28 now. So he's joined a couple seasons back, and I feel like the use of the left foot coming into the centre of the pitch, that modernisation of a fullback, I think like Diogo Dalot has got that. And I've seen a bit of that as well with Terrell Malacia, which is interesting to me that at Feyenoord, he was doing a lot more of that. Whereas at United, actually, we're not seeing a lot of that. So I think it's actually more of a tactical thing. But as Manchester United hopefully reach the level where Ten Hag wants us to be as a team on the ball, we might actually see some of that from Malacia, because I did see more of that inside in the midfield, combining with the midfield players, being a bit more creative from Malacia at Feyenoord, whereas so far at Man United, it's been a bit more like tucking in, being part of the defence, allowing Dalot to be that player. So that might be something that we might see Malacia do as well. And that's where coaching comes into it. I mean, we can't ignore what Ten Hag has done with a couple of these players. Like we're going to get onto Eriksen, and I'll leave that to when we get onto him. But there is differences in Eriksen's game as well.
Did you see that Van Gaal said to Malacia that he should be trying to like learn how to play as a centre back?
He played him, didn't he? He came on for Nathan Ake, I think, last night against Belgium on the left-hand side of the back three. I think Van Gaal said that he wanted to see, he thought he'd be better equipped to deal with De Bruyne, was it? Because he's quicker, obviously, than Daley Blind. So I think did Blind go out to...
Yeah, I didn't watch the game, but when
left wing back, I think. But I think Malacia said he did well defensively, but they had a bit of a row on the touchline, because I think he was criticising him when he was going forward. Yeah, when he was going for nothing major. It's not like they've fallen out, but like a bit of an argument. And I think Malacia sort of held his hands up and said, going forward, he has to sort of learn with his centre back. It's different than if you're at full back or wing back when you're bombing forward, because obviously, it's just a different situation. But Van Gaal was he was sort of typical Louis Van Gaal, complimentary on one point, but almost critical on the other, just saying he needs to be a bit more constructive, I think he said, when he was going forward. So, yeah, I mean, listen, that's great. Great to see him, playing a different position. Although I doubt, I'd be very surprised. I said this in the news this morning, if we saw him playing there for United, but you never know. I mean, it's an option. I just feel that all this points towards the fact that this is a kid who's having a great spell, Malacia. Yeah. Playing for his country, playing well for his club, coming in ahead of a player like Luke Shaw, who, despite his faults, was one of the most spoken about left backs on the planet not that long ago. And now Malacia's come in for an absolute snippet, 40 million euros, got into the team, kept his place in the team, and is now doing bits for his country as well. I'm just going to get into some of the comments, because we've had quite a few people commenting as well. I think Andy Tate's in the comment. Big shout out to Andy Tate. Abhinav Verma made a good point here, if I can find it. He said that, don't forget, I think he said that Dalot's only 115 goals behind Ronaldo.
Not bad.
It's worth mentioning that, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
For Portugal,
keep your eye on that. John Olsen says, John Olsen doesn't say anything. He's welcome to the first team. Thanks for joining. Michael Dyson, who's been a member of the academy for 8 months, says, where did Joe get his jacket from? Very hip, happening, and/or stylish.
Uniqlo.
All right, very nice. Good stuff.
Check it out.
John Hemingway, just so you don't feel out, says, Abdul looking flash today.
Thank you, man.
With your flash watch and everything.
Yeah.
What's that?
Little timepiece and that.
That's nothing much.
Nothing much. How many thousands of pounds was it?
You should be ashamed of yourself.
Keep that to myself.
Yeah.
It's a 3.5k watch. I'm joking. I'm joking.
You'll have people on Google Maps looking for you.
That was a couple hundred quid from Cheshire Oaks.
Sergio
I've not got that kind of money. I'm not Jay Marty. Come on.
Jay, I've got a seconder here. I mean, Missy's got me for Christmas. It was on sale. Right.
She still likes it, by the way. That's
I know, but it's not. It's very thoughtful. Is what I wanted.
You should have spent more on it to me.
You what?
You said she should.
No, I get angry when my missus spends more money at Christmas, not less. Do you know what I mean? It's the other way around. Ace NOG123 says Cancelo joined City in 2019 when he was 25. Yeah. And what's he done since he's been there? Nothing. Won nothing, done nothing. Rubbish. The low all day long. United Spotlight says AWB isn't a good defender. He's a good tackler. There's a massive difference.
Yes.
Santa Notch says you should have been given a Fellaini watch. Yes, great shout. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button as well. I've put a link in the chat for both likes and well, not a link for likes, but a link for subscribe, and just hit the like button. Let's get to 500 likes by the end of the video, or just as quickly as possible, actually. Never mind, by the end of the video. Also, while we're on the subject of Portugal, Bruno Fernandes, he got on the score sheet as well, didn't he, the other night? He's another one who seems to be enjoying himself again. We saw that great interview he gave with Adam Crafton at The Athletic. If you've not checked that out, go and see it. Very honest, very open, as you'd expect from Bruno. And there was times last season where he looked like he was really feeling everything. Feeling the fact that Ollie got sacked. Remember the game against Watford where the crowd were booing the players and he went over to them and said, pointing at himself, they're having a go at Ollie, and said, listen, it's us. You know, blame the players, not the manager. Towards the end of the season, we saw him just trying just silly things, and I don't mean to be harsh, but shooting from 50 yards out and trying 100-yard passes because he was just uber frustrated with what was going on.
Missed a couple of penalties as well.
Yeah,
like unlike him.
Yeah, missed the penalty at Arsenal, of course, which is one that sort of sticks in the memory. Seems to be enjoying himself, settled into the role as captain as well. Hasn't lost the plot, which I feared he might do if he got the armband, in terms of arguing with the referee and stuff. He still does that, but in a bit more of a controlled way. And yeah, he's just playing well. He's just playing well for his country and playing well for his club as well.
I think he's really good. I think he's a really good player. And last year, like, he had a shit year or whatever. But like, look at other players in our team's bad year. Like Rashford got 4 goals. Yeah. Martial got 2 goals, then got sent on loan, got another 2. He got no goals all season basically. Bruno Fernandes still got, I think, 14 assists last season in all competitions. Like, for most midfielders in the world, that's their best ever season.
Half of them
for
come in like the Champions League as well.
Yeah, he got 6 or 7.
Remember that game? Was it the second half against? Who was it?
Atlanta.
Yeah, he got
Trafford,
loads, created more chances than anyone's done all season in the Champions League.
It's like
in one game.
Even him on his worst year since moving back from Italy, he's literally putting up numbers that most midfielders would be like career numbers. Like 8 goals, 14 assists is brilliant. But then this season, I think, like, again, he's never going to hit 28 goals, 17 assists, or whatever it was the year before last, because that's just.
I think the thing is with Bruno,
but he's so much better again.
I do criticise Bruno a bit because I really like Bruno, and I really like having that type of player in the team. That, again, it's about that mentality as well. And sometimes, when he's on the floor or like he has a moan and stuff, that side of it does annoy me. But for the majority of the time, you feel like he is a winner. He wants to win, and he wants to be part of a winning team. But I think with Bruno is when there's chaos and when there's instability as a side tactically, and then the environment's all over the place, you start seeing it in his football. You start seeing more of those high-risk passes, more of those just wanting to make a difference. But that comes from a good place where he's trying to make a difference. He's trying to lead the team. I feel like slowly, and I don't want to get pulled into it because I've seen it with Bruno where you see a few games and you're like, oh, he's actually toned it down a bit and he starts making the better decisions and he starts understanding his role more. But when I look at the Leicester game and I look at the Arsenal game, I really enjoyed those performances in the sense that I think now he knows that Eriksen is the guy that's going to transition that first phase ball like into him, and then he's like that final touch player, which I always say Bruno is the one that you want in almost those Muller areas, not completely like Thomas Muller areas all the time where you're in the box, but just being part of that final touch. Or if you look at his goal for Portugal as well, just enters the area. The goal for Southampton for us, very similar goals where he's looking at the cross from the fullback, then hits the space, hits the back of the net with one touch. Did he get the assist for Marcus as well? Again, the ball gets played from midfield, progressed from Eriksen and our midfield into him. And you feel like that last little bit of play, and I think I remember Atletico Madrid away, did he assist the Lampard as well?
And he was having a bit of a stinker then, but he still, like you were saying there, Joe, the thing with Bruno is, even when he was having a bad season or a bad game, he still got that in him, where he can produce something.
I think as well, it like being further up, knowing that Eriksen is the one behind him, which, you know, who can play that pass into him. I would say, obviously, with Ronaldo not starting the big games at the moment, with a front 4 or front 5 of, you know, Rashford, Sancho, Antony and Bruno, I think Bruno is the best finisher in the team. Yeah, he's the only one that's ever hit 28 goals in a season. I don't know if Sancho did it at Dortmund, but I don't think he ever hit those sorts of numbers in terms of goals. that finish that you're talking about, was it against Southampton?
Yeah, that was brilliant.
A phenomenal
and
finish
even the one
on the
for
volley.
Portugal, like in the middle of the week, like you just look and it's so controlled.
Yeah.
Like, it's coming again. It's a similar way to Southampton, where it's coming and he actually controls the shot so well.
He's a
to
very
get
good
past the
finisher.
keeper.
No,
And I think
he
that
is. I agree
keeping
with
him
that.
in those areas between sort of halfway between the halfway line and the 18-yard box forward, that final third, it's crucial. That's where he does his best work. And yes, he can play 40, 50-yard passes in behind. He can do that at times. But there are very few people in football who can score and assist at the rate he can. So put him in those areas where he can score and assist, and he'll do that. And I think we are seeing more of that. Like I said, slowly. I'm not fully convinced.
Whether it's not even about him. It's about whether us as a side can maintain that for him.
Yeah.
Now, like it's the same thing with Dalot. Same thing with a lot of players in this team now that we see a good run of form from Marcus Rashford. It's about, are we going to recreate those situations? Are we building a consistent patterns of play to accommodate what these guys do so well? And I feel like what I want to see now is hopefully Eriksen become more controlling, and we'll talk about that his performance against Denmark, like where you start seeing him almost Paul Scholes.
Just on Bruno though, before we get on to
I
Eriksen.
love Christian Eriksen.
I love him, absolutely love him.
He's been
So
phenomenal.
good.
But just before we get on to, before he starts telling us about Denmark in the 80s, I just
The Laudrup brothers.
Yeah, the Laudrup brothers.
That's all I've got.
With Bruno though, one thing you notice, those games, the Arsenal game, the Liverpool game, we're up against it for the last 10 minutes in those games, and he was everywhere.
I love that.
His engine is
Everywhere.
unbelievable.
And he was making important interceptions, important tackles at a time in the game where, especially against the Scousers, last 5 minutes, they get a goal, they could even win that game.
Yeah.
Because everyone's like, oh, you know what I mean? A late equaliser, still enough time. He was charging down shots, he was doing all sorts. And at times when you've seen him doing that stuff, he's been too crazy almost. He's been, you know what I mean? He needs to rein it in. But his engine
Aimless.
and the way he was sort of just kept going and getting the crowd going as well was fantastic. And that almost went under the radar. You could see, because, the way that Erik ten Hag's got these players playing is obviously quite physically draining. We've seen Marcus getting cramp a couple of times, players having to go off. Jadon Sancho looks like he's been running to the ground after an hour. Yet Bruno, 93rd minute, and he's running around like it's the first minute. And it's, that's almost a part of his game that goes unnoticed. And it's very, very important to the Manchester United's wins, because I feel like if you don't have that from him in those games, you're not picking up 6 points from the Scousers and Arsenal. Not a chance.
I think
I agree.
when he came in, when he first came into the team, that is, in my lifetime, or since I was watching football consciously, like I caught a few games in the 90s, but I was 4 or 5 years old, don't really remember. The single biggest jumping quality that a single player has brought to Man United. Like obviously Van Persie came in and won us the league, which is more than Bruno did, but we were already the second or first best team in the league, and he cemented it. Bruno Fernandes took us from performing and earning points like the sixth best team in the league to the second best team in the league. And I've not seen anyone else make that jump for United. So and a lot of how he did that is obviously his quality, but his effort. And we had a team again 3 or 4 years ago that was full of that sort of, what's the word? Disillusioned former Jose players, where you're in this high pressure, high intensity environment that Jose builds and constructs, and then it falls apart. Turns out no one was trained and no one's running. You're not matching oppositions for work rate. Do you remember that when Ollie came in and was like, no one's trying, no one's running, and then you get Bruno Fernandes come in, change everything, and then you almost forget, because we're used to him, that. And also because Malassia's come in and done a similar thing compared to Luke Shaw. You've seen Martinez do a similar thing. You've seen Eriksen do a similar thing. But Bruno Fernandes is more than capable of keeping up with those players in terms of intensity and work rate. And I think having those players dotted around the team, they bring up the level of players around them, just in terms of working hard, how hard they work. And I think he's a phenomenal player.
Talking of Bruno Fernandes, you've got a lovely Bruno Fernandes cup there. You can see there. You can see that. On the
Cut to the other camera. Come on,
hello.
he's doing it for
there
you.
We go.
There you go.
Yeah, we've got a Bruno Fernandes. We've got Lisandro Martinez. We've got another Bruno Fernandes cup there. We've got loads of merch. If you go and click on the link in the description, you get 20% off our Paddock merch if you buy 2 items or more using the code Paddock20. We've got a Christian Eriksen top coming up soon, haven't we? It's not there
soon.
yet. It will be up before the derby as well. We've got Lisandro Martinez, Marcus Rashford, of course, Ten Hag.
We've got the Stretford Paddock collection.
Stretford Paddock collection, yeah. I know that's a popular one as well. So make sure you go and visit paddockmerch.com using the code Paddock20. There's a link in the description. If you buy 2 or more items, you get 20% off. Yes. And we appreciate all the support we get as well for the channel. You know, since we took over the channel a couple of years ago, the support has been phenomenal, and we appreciate it all. Jenny Time says, where did Abdullah buy his jacket? That's not part of Paddock merch, but we'll answer it.
River Island.
Yeah.
You know what's mad?
What?
I bought this at a separate time from River Island.
Yeah.
This and the cargo pants. The River Island sponsor me.
I haven't bought anything from River Island in ages, you know.
It's nice.
River Island's all right, isn't it?
Good stuff.
Yeah, I used to like
time.
River Island. And if you are watching anyone from River Island, we are available for sponsorship.
River Island. Sounds like a salad dressing.
Yes.
Thousand.
Shall we talk about, I can see you two can't barely control yourselves. You want to talk about Christian Eriksen, don't you?
Yes.
Because he's a pretty good footballer, isn't he? He's all right.
It's just nice, isn't it?
It's nice.
Just one of the nice stories of football where I'm not even going to mention it, but we all know what happened. But then put that to one side.
Well, you can mention it though, because
no, but everyone's mentioned it enough.
He
died in that.
Yeah,
he came back.
But it does add to
from the dead.
It does add to it because it's one of the reasons we got him. Because if that had not happened, he's not going to go from Inter to Brentford. No disrespect to him, but he isn't. And it's like you're looking at a player where a lot of people thought he isn't going to be able to play again. Then he's not going to be able to reach anywhere near the levels he did. Then he goes to Brentford and absolutely shines. And then you think he comes to United, and then the question is he going to play much for United? Is he just a backup to Bruno? Is he someone you're going to bring in for the Europa League games? And I'm guilty of asking that question myself. And not only does he start every game, he's our most important player. Yeah. He's fantastic, and he's absolutely running the show.
Do you know, like some people have like a near-death experience, and they'd start running marathons, or like they change their job, or they leave their wife, or whatever. I'm so glad that Bruno Fernandes has had a near-death experience and decided to become world-class again. Like that's what he's done. He's not bought a Ferrari or started doing like bungee jumps, or like raising money or something. He's just one of the best midfielders in the Premier League.
It must be nice to be able to choose to do that, isn't it?
You know what I mean?
Say what I'm going to do, because I've just I've got to live life to the fullest. So the best way to live it to the fullest is just to be the best player in the world.
Whereas if I had a near-death experience, I'd probably just buy a loom and start making rugs in my own shed.
I might get a tattoo.
Yeah, you get a tattoo, and he's just gone, I'm going to be one of the best players in the Premier League. And it's so good that, like, especially after last season when there were so many players in the team that by the end of the year, they just felt really, not unlikable, but hard to like. Yeah. And it was full of players who go, not him again. Oh, God, he's not trying again. Oh, another shot from 30 yards again. Like, whereas he's just such a likeable bloke after everything he's been through. The fact we got him on a free, so no one can ever say, you spent how much on him? We spent fuck all on him.
Do you know,
every single piece of this story
the weird thing is
just beautiful.
As well. When we were linked with him, you wanted him. I think everyone wanted him. Had we not got him, I don't think anyone would have lost their mind about it.
No.
I don't think there'd have been like, I can't believe we didn't get Eriksen. And now you think, I can't believe we got him. Do you know what I mean? I can't believe we got this player on a free as well, which is just unlike United, because we usually spend, tens of millions on players that aren't even good enough. Yeah, we've got this player on a free who's got, likeable personality, puts a shift.
I feel like he feels
an absolutely different class on the ball.
He feels a void as well that was missing in this team, because I think someone made this point, I think I'd go into Joe and Adam when I think they were on the overlap, and someone, whether it was you or Carl, one of the United fans on there, made a point about how is he like sort of playing the role that Frankie would have played? And I sort of, when I think about it, I think, yeah, because when you look at that Ajax team that Frankie was in, he almost played that role because, McTominay, I think whoever usually would partner Frankie there would be playing the McTominay role where you're bullying the midfield, trying to regain possession. Then sort of Frankie would progress you and get you into the final third. What we're seeing from Eriksen is, I feel like we've not had that type of footballer, and it's such a rare type of footballer from this version of Eriksen. I'm not talking about what we've seen a lot of in the past, of that Paul Scholes-esque where you drop into certain pockets and you find that ball out wide, and we've seen a lot of that in that. I missed that Denmark game, but then I seen someone post like some of his clips against France, and some of the switches of play were just absolutely incredible. He created 8 chances against France.
It's just like clipping the balls over the top for people to just be like through on goal.
And it's the
Like,
right way to pass.
You're running behind. Let me just pop it onto you, and you can just have a shot one-on-one with the goalkeeper.
It's unbelievable, and it's not like Eriksen's just hitting the space or like just get onto that ball. He's putting the ball on a plate, or he's putting the ball right to the player's feet. And I think as a team, he's making such a huge difference. I think even his energy is so underrated. I think the way he gets around on the pitch, we watched that Arsenal game, and even when he lost the ball, you almost had to foul him for that goal that Arsenal fans seem to think that should have stood in that game. I feel like that's where...
What you're on about, they've never mentioned it.
Yeah, they've not been mentioning it pretty much every day since the game. But they clearly don't care about that game, and they've forgotten about it, haven't they? But when you look at Eriksen, I feel like he's someone that, again, you mentioned the point where there's a couple of these players in the team where they bring up the levels in terms of their intensity and stuff. And I feel like I really, really underrated his intensity as a player, because I thought he could play deep. I've seen bits of that at Inter and bits of that at Brentford, especially when he come and played against us at Old Trafford. He was very good when you look at the switches of play, even those quick short dribbles and then finding that threaded ball. I feel like he always makes the right decision, but also so intense with his play. Like, really, there's a bit of physicality to him that surprised me. And I feel you want that mentality and the technical ability to come together. And a couple of players so far that have joined us have done that. But the most that stood out for us, no doubt, is Eriksen. And he's been one of the best players in Europe this season, one of the best midfielders, at least, in Europe this season.
We talk about physicality as well. It's not just about like frame size, is it? Like, has anyone seen that picture of Busquets from the game the other day after the game? Yeah. Where honestly, I don't even know. It looks like he looks malnourished. Right. This man is so skinny.
Yeah.
And yet he's one of the best defensive midfielders or deep line midfielders in history.
Yeah.
And obviously he's playing in a league where it's not quite as slam and go as the Premier League is, but I think he'd have done all right in the Premier League over the last 10 years.
Safe to say.
But like, physicality and size aren't necessarily the same thing.
Yeah.
And I agree with you, like, Christian Eriksen is someone that, even though he's not that big, he's not someone that gets bullied off the ball particularly, because generally he just passes it before he gets tackled. It's quite simple when you do it. Like, you don't have to knock someone out of the way and then pass it like Scott McTominay likes to do. Or Pogba was the basically, because that's who he's replacing, isn't it? Pogba did that too much. Whereas Eriksen just passed it before they get to him.
How much do you feel he's benefited, or how much do you feel that Erik Ten Hag has sort of learned to use him in a better way throughout the season? Because the first couple of games, it was a bit weird, wasn't it? It was like, it was a false 9 against Brighton, and then a DM against Brentford, and we were all going, what's he doing with Christian Eriksen here? I remember me and you were on the Brentford watch along. I remember being at a game for the Brighton, was saying, really? And it looked like almost Erik Ten Hag was finding his feet a little bit of how can I get the best out of him. And then from Liverpool onwards, maybe it's not a coincidence, I know there's other things that have gone on as well, but from Liverpool onwards, you've seen Eriksen being used in, his ideal role, and the team shining as well. And it just felt like maybe Erik Ten Hag had to sort of work out, how can I get the most out of this guy, or how can I use him in the best way? Because we were scratching our heads a little bit, weren't we, after the Brentford game?
I think it was also not just because it's not just Eriksen's midfield, is it? And I think you look at how many games Fred's played over the last 2-3 seasons. It felt like Ten Hag was trying to fit Fred in as well those first couple of games.
Yeah.
And then if you asked, I would say pretty much any United fan at the start of this season, if one of Fred or McTominay has to be dropped from United's midfield, who would it be? Almost everyone would have said McTominay.
100%.
Fred was comfortably the better player last season. Like you said, maybe the best player under Rangnick, which isn't the greatest accolade of all time, but it's certainly, in comparison to other players. And yet, it felt, and now, Scott McTominay seems undroppable for United. Yeah. And I think at the very start of the season, with those heavy defeats, Ten Hag was trying to fit in Fred and McTominay and Eriksen and Bruno, and not quite sure how they would all work together. Whereas now, a couple of quick defeats, get Fred out of the team. Actually, this is much more balanced immediately, and that's why it's clicked so quickly. Because I think, not that that's Fred's fault necessarily, but we've just found a system that seems to work. So I think he was trying to, sort of find his feet and see where Eriksen really fit in. I think
one of the games where you mentioned the Brentford game, and you sort of that and the Brighton game was complete different opposite areas of the pitch where he's playing, because I think when going into that game and there was talk of him being a false 9, I thought it would be more like Bruno and him playing deeper. It just didn't make sense, and I think I really noticed it in the first half Because in the second half, he actually drops deep, if you remember. And he's probably our best player in the pitch against Brighton in the second half.
No, he was, yeah. He did. He was, I agree, I thought he was our man of the match.
But it's the whole thing
Brighton.
of starting him there, innit? And then you think the Brentford game, then okay, you've seen him do well deep in that Brighton game, but then Brighton is sitting so deep that you're going to have that complete control. Brentford game, Brentford is pressing us high up. They know De Gea can't really play out the back. But where he's receiving the ball off the centre halves is such a different situation. Then I think you slowly start seeing, and this is where Erik ten Hag, I think you've got to give him that credit for the quick adjustment of style, like where obviously bring Varane and Martinez in, and then he start using Martinez a bit more in terms of that progression, rather than having McTominay or Eriksen come deep in certain areas. You start using Dalot, Varane, Martinez, Malacia at times, but mainly the other three, for those progressive passes into the centre. And he's leaving Eriksen in certain areas where he's a lot more effective, because once he receives that in that sort of area where he finds Bruno quickly or makes that quick transition play, makes the right pass and makes the right decision, he's sort of leaving him in that zone. But when he has to come deep and find a switcher play or anything, he can do that as well. And that's credit to Erik ten Hag, and also credit to Eriksen from the fact that he can just adjust as a player. And honestly, I love so far what he's done at Man United, and I think United could be in big trouble, hopefully not, if he picks up any injuries throughout the season, because I think, again, we mentioned the point about his physicality and intensity that's been underrated from myself that I didn't expect. I think you're having an all-round midfielder in this team that you don't want to lose. So I'm impressed with Eriksen so far.
You mentioned there earlier about the fact that Scott McTominay has come into this midfield and has now, and I keep saying it, and I'm going to keep saying it because, to be honest with you, part of me enjoys saying it, and he's now keeping Casemiro out of the team,
and
right on merit.
Yeah.
Not obviously reputation. It'd be Casemiro straight in there, especially when you look at what he's won. But Scott McTominay, who, I agree with you. I'm at pains to say we don't speak for any other fans, but we interact with fans, and it is blindingly obvious that the vast majority of United fans rated Fred over McTominay and wanted to see him start based on pre-season and last season
also
as well.
Fred and Casemiro is a sort of known quantity
from the national team. However, Scott McTominay has forced the issue and made himself so far pretty much undroppable. You go back to the Arsenal game where the team's announced, McTominay's in, no Casemiro, and people going, I thought this would have been the game where Casemiro comes in. And again, McTominay is fantastic, and he's just having a really good season, and it's the form that, going back to the point about international matches, we've seen him taking that into his Scottish form as well.
Yeah, it looks brilliant. And I don't know whether it's just confidence or he's playing less of these balls. So basically, I don't know why all of a sudden Scott McTominay can pass the ball forward, because it didn't seem like he could do that. He's 25 years old and he's just learned to pass the ball forward. Like, look at the highlights of him for the last two national matches. Look at the highlights of him, or the 4 games or whatever from the last 4 or 5 Man United matches. He can pass the ball forward now, like consistently. And whether that's because he's got some confidence, which it must be partly because, I've seen players at five-a-side who have a better pass success rate than Fred and McTominay did last season, and they can't be that bad at that. Maybe it was just a confidence thing, or maybe now he's got Eriksen next to him. He knows that if it's too tricky, he doesn't have to go for it. He can lay it off and he can give it to Eriksen, because before he was passing it to Fred, and obviously that doesn't fill you with much confidence either. But he looks a completely different player. He's getting rid of the ball quicker. He don't, we were joking last season that every second touch was a tackle. Like, he controlled the ball and it spilled away from him, and now he has to lunge in and fly through someone.
Everything's a 50-50.
Yeah, everything's a 50-50. Yeah, we were saying that on the watch-alongs, weren't we? Like, everything's a 50-50 with McTominay. And yet now it seems like he's getting the ball out of his feet quicker. He's passing the ball quicker. Like,
go back to the Brighton game, though. He was a meme.
Yeah.
Oh, that Brighton game's the worst.
Because there was a bit where he ran forward with the ball and he ends up getting booked.
Yeah.
He ends up losing possession, flying into a tackle because he's lost.
He looks so amateur. He looks so Sunday
heavy.
League.
And then even, I think the Brentford game, he came on at half time. Again, someone's clipped him up. And you can clip up anyone. You can clip up Lionel Messi and make him look bad. So it doesn't tell you a full story. But my point is, people after those 2 games were still going, why is McTominay still part of this Manchester United team? And then that Liverpool game, he was great. And if you're going to play great against anyone, it'd be the Scousers at Old Trafford, you're going to get the crowd on side. And he's, unlike in the past where we've seen him do this before, he had a great game against Leeds and then he was shocking the next game. Yep. Like, God's sake. Or great game against Burnley, I think, at Old Trafford, he was ridiculously good. And then again, the next game he's awful. But for the last 4 Premier League games, he's kept up that consistency.
I think
he's
it's the
kept
fact
up
that
doing what we want him to do.
That's the last point you make about what we want him to do, and we want him to be able to play in those deeper positions, because it's all good if you can have them Leeds games where you burst forward and score a goal, or the Wolves and Burnley games where you've scored a goal, because those are very situational that suit you for that game. So it doesn't show you a lot as a team, but it's the same with McTominay. Now, I'm not with Dalot, McTominay. I think Eriksen's a bit different, and a couple of the other players that we've spoken about with a lot of enthusiasm, and we really rate what they've done so far this season. I've still got my reservations about them. But when you look at what Ten Hag has done with understanding how to use how to get the best out of these players on the pitch, and which areas they pick up the ball, which areas would they be better to face a certain position where you think, okay, you can't really make that diagonal or the pass over the top or whatever, Scott McTominay, but I could really use you with picking up the ball in this area. Maybe this will be easier for you to break the lines a bit better. In that Arsenal games, we actually see in the Arsenal game, especially, we see a couple of times where he bullies the opposition, the Arsenal players, and does the Scott McTominay things, which I always like about him. But then the other part of him, which I think I've never really seen of him, which he starts actually playing balls between the lines. And I've always said with McTominay honestly, McTominay is the one player I think in my life watching Man United where there's many occasions where I really, really like this kid, and there's so many occasions where I'm like, I'm done with this guy.
Well, even more so than Nani.
Nah, Nani. You know
one
what?
player,
I was such a Nani.
Come on. Like, Nani's highlight reel looks like he's the greatest player that's ever played football. Yeah. But there was so many times with Nani, and I love Nani, where I wanted to kill him. Yeah. I was like, what are you doing?
I was such a Nani fanboy that I used to argue all the time.
I bet there's a lot of arguments as well, because he could be literally the best player in the world,
I hate
or the
anyone
worst player on the pitch.
Nani.
Like, it was, I've never seen a player at either end of the spectrum. We are going to have to move on. Before we wrap up, give us your Wally of the week.
I mean, what's going on in Italy is pretty mad, isn't it?
What, the fascists? The fascists. Let's give fascism another go.
I think, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because it worked out so well for us last time.
Voting in someone who's absolutely, definitely far right is mad in 2022. Like, there's not really many ways to paint that.
Have they actually voted them in, or is it like...
Yeah, I think she's in, as of this morning. Like, I can't really defend or say anything.
I'm glad to hear that.
That is just
I won't
mad.
ask you to.
Absolutely mad.
It is.
Like,
it feels like Wally doesn't do it the justice it deserves, doesn't do it the gravitas. No, you're right, though. I'm not having a big...
to civilization of the week.
Right, Wally of the week, the people voting for fascists. Go on.
Trying to think. Do you know what it is? Usually it'd be one of them lot that go on like Talk Sport or whatever, like Gabby Agbonlahar. But the fact is they're getting away with it because it's bloody International Week, innit? So I'm not seeing anything. Can't think of anyone. I think I've not spent enough time on socials this week. Maybe the pound.
Actually,
weaker than the
pound.
dollar.
I would like to go with... You're going with the pound for Wally of the week.
Pound is Wally of the week.
I don't think we've ever had
the dollar.
money. A currency as Wally of the week. That is one of the most...
we're officially
original.
done as a country.
So Abdul is having to go at the pound. Not sterling. Not the people responsible for it falling. The actual pound itself. It needs to work harder.
Especially with what's gone on in the last couple of weeks. This country needs people we can look up to.
Yeah, so we need the pound.
Is not pulling his weight.
Come on.
So a bit of resolution.
For God's sake.
I'm going to go with Mark Lawrenson.
Oh,
you didn't
for being sacked?
Yes.
Oh, for saying
I was thinking I've seen something.
You didn't lose your job.
What did he say?
Because he's 65 years old and white. You lost your job because you shit at it. It's that fucking simple.
And the fact he was asking for mad money, apparently.
So spare me this. I'm the victim of racism garbage that these old white people keep saying. Like, oh, it's wokeism now. Probably be replaced with someone who's, from an ethnic background. Well, maybe he will be. But that's not their fault. That's because he's not good enough at his job. This is a guy that picked Liverpool not to lose a game for 159 times when he was doing the predictions. For 5 years, he thought they weren't going to lose. He's not a good pundit. It's that simple.
Someone made a point, I think, Tigo, Filthy Fellas, he quote tweeted it. And that's, if I'd remembered that's literally the one I would have used for Wally of the Week. But he said that, like, how, you got younger people who are bringing in, like, an analytical point of view, bringing in research into the studios. Like, we see it, like, come on, like, even at Paddock, the amount of times we come here and everyone here has got their notes or got their thing that they've watched some clips.
What do you mean, even at Paddock? Even at Paddock.
Even at such a
It's just
shed
a
full of
horribly run
effort of a
YouTube
channel like this. We've done our basic research.
just-
Wow.
Yeah,
Hey,
you coming round here and
make sure you sign up to Abdullah's channel because you won't be seeing him here again.
No. You come down here
Even
with
at Paddock.
just 4 of us shirtless huddled around a burning bin most of the time.
Even on this channel, we do our own work. Hey.
The thing with him is as well is like, obviously the comments are mad, but like he's one of the few pundits that you listen, and I think in the past he was much more in line with the times and was a successful, good pundit, you know, in comparison to what was out there. But you listen to him now in some games. Like, it sounds like he wants to go home. Like, he genuinely sounds bored as fuck.
And he doesn't really give you anything.
No,
as a fan watching it, you don't really gain anything.
And just sometimes you think, like,
I feel like with a pundit, you have to be, like, either... you know, have that knowledge, that experience that you can tap into. He's obviously won a lot and he's been around a lot. I know not recently, he's not playing the Premier League or anything, but this is a man who was very successful in terms of, you know, what he won and the amount of games he played. So you tap into that, your experience, you talk about that and, you know, make it relevant. You're opinionated, you're massively opinionated.
Like Souness.
Yeah, like Simon Jordan's never played football, but he's opinionated and I can't stand the guy. But he'll generate a discussion or he'll, you know what I mean? There's a reason he's on there. He offers something and you go, okay, I can understand why he's being employed. But if you're like, you've just got apathy, you're not really tapping into any experience and you're not really saying anything where you go, oh, that's great insight, that. Or, oh, I can't believe he said that. Or, you know, generating a discussion. You just sort of almost, you know, like you're waiting for a bus, you're just waiting to go home, like you say. Then, no, you got to understand
as a fan, you want to gain
and, you know, and also,
watching.
if the guy was like 42 or whatever, you could go, well, maybe that, but he's 65. And it's like, okay, they might be looking at younger people, younger ex-players or whatever, or pundits who are more relevant. That's just, you know, that's not you know, a bad thing on him. Look at, he was around the same time as Alan Hansen. Alan Hansen retired about 15 years ago. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Off his own back.
Just invest in some like crypto and just put your legs up, mate, and watch telly. Like you're 65 with a lot of money probably, so yeah, that's my advice to you, Lawrence.
Put all that money into crypto. What you want to do is, over the last 45 years
just don't put,
of being one of the best centre-backs ever, or certainly, you know, up there, and then all the money made through BBC, don't invest that.
Buy the Fernandes NFT.
Do you know what? He won't have you doing it.
Risk it all.
He won't have
Bet
you put
it on zero.
He won't have you put it into the pound because apparently the pound isn't performing highly enough. That's why it's his Wally of the week. Anyway,
shocking week.
Enough of this absolute, you know, financial advice for the insane. Where can people find you?
Just fucking throw my pounds in the bin, mate. Just setting them on fire and trying to remold them as.
I'll tell you what my mate said when like the Queen died. He went, you know what you want to do?
Don't get cancelled.
You know, he went, you want to keep all of your coins with her head on it.
Yeah.
That'll be worth something. Oh yeah, because famously there's hardly any of them, is there? She was only the monarch for about 70 odd years, so there's hardly any coins with her head on them, other than about
you can sell that on
million in circulation.
You can sell that on eBay in 20 years, mate.
All right, whatever, the billions of them. Yeah.
Hold on to that coin. How long for? 100 million years when it's a fucking artifact. If someone could dig that up in literally 10 million years, and it's still rare.
I held on to my pound, and 2 weeks later it's worth half of what it was.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was chatting shit. Where can people find you, you little punk?
Abdul GH _on Twitter. I don't appreciate it, calling me.
I'm still smarted for the fact you went, even on Paddock, we do our own
but
work.
listen, we're only on the come up. This is still the come up. It's a bit of a thing, isn't it? Like this is not the levels Paddock is gonna be. That's what I'm saying. We're gonna be on TV. We're gonna be everywhere.
Nicely done.
Is there coins with the king's head on yet? Have they started being?
There was a coin they brought out a little while ago for him, but it's not like an official thing, like a whatever, like a £2 sort of type coin that you can buy on the.
But the official mintage of King Charles.
So they've
hasn't begun
stopped.
yet.
Like that's it. No more Queen.
Well, yeah, but they're not going to.
On the dot, like as soon as like the news come out, they're like, yo, like the guys.
Someone press the emergency stop button.
I don't think so. I mean, I think they have sort of times when they do it anyway, so I'm not sure. Listen, we don't know, do we? If you want to get that advice, don't get it from us, because we obviously haven't got a fucking clue. But if you do
minting.com.
Somewhat, there we go. The producer's telling me I've heard it can take years to sort, so there you go. There's a bit of an update on that. Make sure you are checking out Paddock merch, paddockmerch.com. Big thanks to our sponsors as well. Don't forget to go and check them out. There's a link in the description. You know where to find him, Sloppy Joe's. You know where to find him as well. So make sure you're checking out those guys. I've been Jay. This has been the Paddock Podcast. Thanks for watching.